Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're going to dive headfirst into AGI, artificial general intelligence.
Sounds fun.
Yeah, it's a big topic. A lot of people are curious about what AGI even is. Like what it
Oh,
means,
wait.
what it could do, and whether it's something that's going to happen like tomorrow, or if it's way off in the future, like 100 years from now or something.
Hmm.
So we got some interesting stuff to look at today to kind of guide our deep dive. We've got the Wikipedia page on artificial general intelligence. We've got an article from IBM called The Future of AI Trends Shaping the Next 10 Years.
Okay.
And then a blog post from Pragmatic Coders
Go ahead.
called The Future of AI and How It Will Change Us in 5, 10, and 15 plus years. So a lot to get through.
Yeah, definitely a lot of interesting perspectives there.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like, I don't know about you, but I feel like AGI is just, it's everywhere now.
Oh, yeah.
Like every time I open, it's like a tech website or even just like regular news websites.
He's inescapable.
It's inescapable. It's like
Yeah.
the hot topic.
Yeah, and for good reason. I mean, there's some really exciting developments happening.
Yeah. So, okay. Let's back up for a second and like just define what we're even talking about here.
Sure.
So, Wikipedia defines AGI as a type of AI that matches or surpasses human cognitive capabilities across a wide range of cognitive tasks.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that sounds very impressive.
It does.
But like, what does that actually mean? Like how is that different from the AI that we're already interacting with?
That's a great question because you're right. We're already using AI every day in a lot of different ways. But most of that is what we call narrow AI. So that's AI that's designed for a specific task, like recommending a product or, understanding what you're saying to a voice assistant.
Right.
AGI is different because the idea is that it's not limited to just one skill or one domain. It can learn and adapt across a whole bunch of different areas.
So like instead of just being really good at chess, for example, it could also write a screenplay and, solve a math problem, like all at the same time.
Yeah.
Exactly. Like you're like
Like,
the ultimate multitasker.
Hmm.
With, a much wider range of abilities than any AI we have today.
Okay, so that makes sense. But even I as a human, I'm not that great of a multitasker. Like sometimes I struggle to even like fold a fitted sheet, like it's
No,
just,
please.
some things are just hard. And speaking of things that are hard, the Wikipedia article actually mentioned this IKEA test for AGI.
Oh, yeah.
Which is basically the idea that like, if an AI can look at IKEA instructions
Yeah.
and successfully assemble, a piece of furniture, that's a pretty good indication that it's reached some level of like general intelligence.
It's a fun thought experiment, but
Oh.
it highlights a really important point about AGI because
Right.
for humans, that's a task that we can usually figure out, even if the instructions are terrible or if we're missing a piece. We use our intuition and our knowledge of how things work in the real world, current AI systems, even the really advanced ones. They really struggle with that kind of common sense reasoning.
Yeah, like my common sense tells me that I should probably hire someone else to assemble my IKEA furniture.
Yeah.
That's just me. Okay, so that's interesting. So we've kind of defined like what AGI is and what makes it unique. But let's back up again and talk a little bit about the history of this. Like, how did we even get to this point? Wikipedia mentions that AGI research actually goes all the way back to the 1950s, which is kind of surprising. I don't know. Did you know that?
Yeah, it's pretty fascinating to look back on those early days because there was so much optimism back then.
Really?
Oh, yeah. They really thought that AGI was right around the corner, like just a few decades away, which obviously didn't happen. But it's interesting to see how much progress we've made since then, and also to think about like what those early pioneers would think of the AI we have now.
Yeah, it makes you wonder what they would think of like, our smartphones and everything, like these little supercomputers we carry around in our pockets.
You'd probably be blown away.
Yeah. So it seems like research kind of went a little quiet for a while, though, after that initial burst. Like, was that because of the focus on narrow AI? Like, did everyone just kind of decide to, like, okay, let's focus on these specific applications for now?
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it. While AGI research never completely disappeared, it definitely took a backseat for a while. As researchers and companies focused on developing AI that could, solve practical problems like image recognition or natural language processing, and that led to a lot of the advancements we see today
Yeah.
in those areas.
Right. So it's like we had to master the individual pieces of the puzzle before we could even try to put the whole thing together.
I don't love it.
But now it feels like the AGI puzzle is back on the table in a big way.
Right.
Like Wikipedia mentions that there are like over 70 active AGI projects around the world right now, which is a lot.
It is, and it's not just about research labs anymore either. I mean, we have companies like OpenAI and Google making these huge strides in areas like large language models, like
Yeah.
GPT-3, which are really impressive. And what's really interesting is that access to these powerful AI tools is becoming more and more accessible. Like, it's not just about massive research labs anymore. The IBM article and the Pragmatic Coders post both kind of touched on this idea of how the rise of open source development and cloud computing
Mm-hmm.
is making it possible for, way more people
Yeah.
to experiment with and contribute to AI development.
Right. So it's like
Which-
the barrier to entry is getting lower.
Exactly. And that could really accelerate the pace of progress, not just in narrow AI, but potentially in AGI as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's like the more people who are working on this,
Yeah.
the faster we're going to get there, right?
Potentially, yeah. It's definitely an exciting time to be in this field.
Okay, so it seems like we're getting closer to AGI, but the big question is like, when?
Yeah.
When is it actually going to happen? And Wikipedia presents this like pretty wide range of opinions on this. Some people say it's just a few years away. Other people say it's, a century or more. So where do you fall on that spectrum? Like, what's your best guess?
Well, it's tough to say for sure.
Right.
I mean, if we look at past predictions about AI, they've often been like way too optimistic.
Yeah.
So it's important to be cautious, I think.
Yeah.
But I also think it's important to remember that we're seeing some really incredible breakthroughs right now. Like, we're making progress faster than a lot of people expected.
Okay, so you're saying you're cautiously optimistic.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. Like, I'm not booking my flight to Mars just yet, but I do think that AGI could be closer than we think.
Okay, so that brings us to, I think, the most important question, which is what happens when AGI does arrive? Like, what kind of impact will it have on our world?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Okay.
And it's one that has both, like, really exciting and potentially daunting implications.
Yeah, because on the one hand, like the IBM and Pragmatic Coders articles both talked about, like all these incredible things AGI could do,
Right.
like helping us solve some of the world's most pressing problems, revolutionizing fields like healthcare and education, like even, maybe helping us figure out how to reverse climate change.
Yeah, the potential benefits are enormous.
Mm.
And we could see breakthroughs in areas that we haven't even imagined yet.
Right. But then there are the risks, too.
Right.
And I'm not even talking about, like, robots stealing our jobs, although that's definitely something we need to think about. But I'm talking about, like, the bigger picture, existential kind of risks. Like, could AGI actually pose a threat to humanity itself?
Yeah, that's the big one. And it's a question that honestly keeps a lot of AI researchers up at night.
Yeah. Because we're basically talking about creating something that could be way more intelligent than us.
Yeah.
And we don't really know how it's going to behave.
Right. It's like we're stepping into uncharted territory.
Yeah. So I guess that's what we need to unpack now, right? Like, what are those potential risks and what can we do to try to mitigate them?
Exactly. We need to look at both sides of the coin very carefully if we want to make sure that AGI is used for good.
Right.
Okay, well, that's a perfect place to, I think, leave off for now.
Mm.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. Welcome back. Before the break, we were getting into kind of the scary part of AGI.
Yeah, the potential downsides.
Yeah, and I think that's a good place to start. Like, what are some of the actual risks that we're talking about here?
Yeah.
Besides, robots taking all of our jobs and stuff.
Well, the Wikipedia article talked about the control problem,
Oh, yeah.
which basically means how do we make sure that AGI stays beneficial, even as it becomes, more and more intelligent and more autonomous?
So, like, how do we make sure it doesn't, like, decide to turn on us or something?
Right. Because theoretically, an AGI can become so intelligent that it surpasses our ability to understand it or
Yeah.
to control it.
Yeah. That's a little freaky. What about this intelligence explosion idea? I think the Wikipedia article mentioned that too. Is that like when the AI suddenly becomes super intelligent, like overnight, like it just has this massive upgrade? Yeah, that's the basic idea. It's this like hypothetical scenario where an AGI system could like rapidly improve its own intelligence.
Yeah.
To the point where it just kind of takes off and quickly surpasses human intelligence.
Okay, so we're talking about like a runaway train of intelligence.
Yeah, kind of. And that's one of the things that worries people. Because if an AI becomes that intelligent, we might not be able to predict its behavior.
Right.
Or control it.
Right. Okay, so those are some pretty serious risks, but I know that there are also people who say that these existential risks are overblown or that we have plenty of time to figure out solutions. So, like, what do you think about that?
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of debate about how likely these risks actually are and when they might become a real concern. Some people think that, we're centuries away from developing AGI that's actually capable of those things. Others think that it could happen much sooner.
So it's like, we don't really know,
Hmm.
but we probably shouldn't just ignore the possibility.
Exactly. It's better to be prepared than to be caught off guard.
Okay, so what can we do? Like, how do we prepare for something like that?
Well, one of the most important things is to focus on developing AGI responsibly, which means thinking about the potential risks from the very beginning
Mm.
and building in safeguards.
Okay, so like what kinds of safeguards are we talking about here?
Well, there are a lot of different approaches, but one key area is to focus on AI alignment, which basically means making sure that the goals of the AI are aligned with human values.
Okay, so we need to make sure that the AI is on our side.
Right. And that it understands what we want and what's important to us.
But how do we do that? Like, how do we program values into an AI?
Well, that's a really complex question, and there are a lot of different ideas about how to do it. But one approach is to use machine learning techniques to train AI systems on data that reflects human values.
So, like showing it examples of good behavior
Yeah.
and bad behavior.
Yeah, kind of. Like feeding it data that shows what we consider to be ethical and moral, and then hoping that it learns from that.
Okay, that makes sense. But even if we can teach AI right from wrong, how do we know it's not gonna, like, change its mind later? Or develop its own set of values that are different from ours?
That's a really good question. And it's one that we don't have a definitive answer to yet. But that's why it's so important to keep researching and developing new techniques for AI safety and control, and to be really careful about how we design and deploy these systems.
So it's like we're trying to stay one step ahead of the AI.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In a way, it's a constant race
Yeah.
to make sure that we're always in control.
Okay, so we've talked about AI alignment. Are there any other safeguards that we should be thinking about?
Yeah, transparency is another big one, like making sure that we can understand how AI systems are making decisions and that they're not operating in a black box.
Right, because if we don't know how the AI is working, we can't really trust it, right?
Exactly. And it's also important to involve people from different disciplines in this conversation.
Yeah.
Like, we need ethicists and social scientists at the table, not
Yeah.
just computer scientists and engineers.
Yeah, because this isn't just a technical problem. It's a human problem, too.
Right. And it's going to require us to think about
Yeah.
the big picture. Like, what kind of future do we want to create? And how can we use AGI to help us get there?
Okay, so lots to think about. But I think we're starting to get a better handle on what AGI is and what the potential risks are,
Yeah.
what we can do to try to mitigate those risks. But there's still one big question that we haven't really addressed yet, which is like, what does all of this mean for us? Like for humans? What does the future look like in a world with AGI?
Yeah, that's the big one. And that's what we'll explore in the final part of our deep dive.
Okay, so we're back. And we've talked about what AGI is, the potential risks, how to maybe mitigate those risks. But now I want to zoom out a little bit and talk about like the big picture. Like, what does the future actually look like with AGI?
That's a question that everyone's asking.
Right?
And honestly, I don't think anyone has a definitive answer, but we can, look at the trends and make some educated guesses.
Yeah, okay, so let's do that. Let's speculate a little bit. What are some of the most likely scenarios that you see?
Well, one possibility is that AGI
Yeah.
leads to this like golden age of technological progress, where we're able to solve all these problems that have been plaguing humanity for centuries.
Yeah, like all the stuff we talked about before, like diseases, poverty, climate change.
Exactly. And maybe even more. Like, we could see breakthroughs in space exploration, new forms of energy, things that we can't even imagine right now.
Okay, so like a utopia powered by AI.
Potentially, yeah.
Yeah.
But of course, there's also the flip side.
Right, because with all of this amazing technology comes the potential for misuse, right?
Exactly. And that's one of the biggest concerns. Like, how do we make sure that AGI is used for good
Yeah.
and not for, harmful purposes?
So we're talking about like autonomous weapon systems, that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's one example. But it could also be something more subtle, like using AGI to manipulate people
Oh.
or to control information.
Right, because if you have an AI that's smarter than humans, it could potentially like outmaneuver us, right?
Exactly. And that's why it's so important to think about these issues now before it's too late.
So it's like we're at a crossroads and we need to choose the right path.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. The decisions we make today are going to have a huge impact on the future.
Okay, so let's say we do everything right. We develop AGI responsibly, we put in all the safeguards, we have all the ethical conversations. What does that world look like? Like, what's the best case scenario here?
Well, in a best case scenario, I think AGI could help us to create a more just and equitable world where everyone has access to the resources they need and where we're able to live in harmony with nature.
So, like a world without poverty, without hunger, without war.
Yeah, it sounds idealistic,
Yeah.
but I think it's possible if we use AGI wisely.
Okay, so that's the dream. But let's be realistic for a second. Like, what are some of the challenges that we're going to have to overcome, even if we do everything right?
Well, one of the biggest challenges is going to be figuring out how to distribute the benefits of AGI fairly.
Hmm.
Like, if AGI leads to massive economic growth, how do we make sure that everyone benefits from that growth and not just a small elite?
Yeah, because you could see a scenario where, the people who own the AI
Yeah,
end up controlling everything.
exactly. And that's
Hmm.
something we need to be very careful about.
So we need to think about like new economic models, new social structures.
Yeah, we're going to have to rethink a lot of things,
Hmm.
and it's not going to be easy.
Okay, so we've got our work cut out for us, but let's end on a positive note. Like, what are you most excited about when you think about the future of AGI?
I think what excites me the most is the potential for AGI to help us to understand ourselves better, like to understand what it means to be human and what our place is in the universe.
Okay, that's interesting.
Because if we can create AI that's truly intelligent,
Hmm.
it can help us to, see ourselves in a new light
Yeah.
and maybe even to answer some of the big questions that have been plaguing us for centuries.
Like, are we alone in the universe? What is the meaning of life?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, who knows? Maybe AGI will be the key to unlocking those mysteries.
Okay, well, that's a pretty amazing thought to end on, I think. So
Mhm.
thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive. It's been a really fascinating conversation.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure.
And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in. We hope you found this deep dive into AGI informative and maybe even a little bit inspiring. It's a topic that we're all going to be grappling with in the years to come, so stay curious, stay informed, and most importantly, stay engaged. Until next time.